And I'll make sure to admit the rest of the lobby. Oh, and I think
we're good.
Okay, is my screen still sharing?
Yep.
Perfect. Cool. Well, welcome everyone to the Dapper community call. Today we have a pretty busy agenda. We're going to be talking about the recent v1.1 release, as well as we have some new features and demos that we're going to be showcasing from community members there as well. And at the end, we're as always going to have it open for any discussion or questions that you have along the way. In the meantime, though, we encourage you to go ahead and keep the chat active. We have a lot of members of the Dapper maintainers here to answer your questions. And I forgot to intro myself. I'm Aaron Kroppus. This is my first time leading one of these community calls. Along with Ori, I'm at Microsoft. I'm one of the maintainers of the Dapper documentation repo, as well as helping out in various other repos as well. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So the big announcement we have is Dapper v1.1 release is out. We encourage you to go check this out and to upgrade your deployments and upgrade your local environments as well. Lots of new features to highlight here. Today we're going to be taking a look at this new preview feature we have for sidecar injection into Kubernetes jobs with the new Shutdown API. You can also define Dapper sidecar environment variables. E-tag is required for actors, and the list goes on. And those are just some of the highlights. The full list here is a tremendous amount of work across the Dapper runtime, the Dapper CLI, the components, the various SDKs, and the quick starts. So huge thank you to all of the community members who helped with this release. It's been amazing seeing how the view counts, the downloads, and everything for Dapper has just exploded ever since our v1.0 release. And so huge thank you to everyone who helped contribute to this v1.1. With that, one more quick note is in terms of the v1.2 release and really the next 6 months of releases, we encourage you to go to the Dapper repo, and you can check out our 6-month plan. We've pinned that to the top here. And if you want to help influence the plan, please thumbs up any of the various issues that we've listed here. You can see that these are all now within our plan for the next 6 months, and we'll be updating this as we begin to tackle those in progress and completed. So as for example, open up one of these, you can go down here and thumbs up this issue to voice your support for that issue. Now on to our very first feature demo. We have one of the community members, Hugo, joining us, and I'll actually kick it over to Hugo now to do a quick intro, talk to us about kind of his contribution and what he was able to add to Dapper. So I'll kick it over to you, Hugo.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. So I've been working on the Shutdown API and the job Kubernetes sidecar injection. So I'm going to talk about what the issue we have with the sidecar pipeline and showcase the little Shutdown API. So first, a little to be sure that everyone is on the same page. What's a job? So in Kubernetes, you have a classical pod with different states, pending, running, failed. And those are defined to be long-running process. So it's a web server or something like that, managed by deployment or replica set. A job, on the other side, is something that will finish at one donated time. So for example, you're doing some asynchronous image resizing or something like that. And it's managed by the job controller. Most of the time, your pods are managed by sets, so stateful set, daemon set, deployment, replica set, etc. And one pod has multiple containers. In the job space, it's the same thing. Your pod is managed by a job and can be managed by a cron job. So if you're running some kind of everyday job backup and things like that. One note is that a job is considered completed when all the containers inside a pod are finished, and the exit code of those processes will determine the result of the job and if it has to retry or not. So what's the issue with the sidecar pattern? It's really simple. In a pod, when you create an app, a pod with the annotation from Dapper, a sidecar will be injected, and your pod will have two containers. And this pod will hopefully run forever and not crash. But in job context, we will have the same behavior. So the sidecar will be injected at the creation, and your job will have a Dapper day container. But when your job is finished, the Dapper day will run forever, and Kubernetes will never know when the job is ready, and you will have some weird state, not ready error, depending on the health product, etc. So the solution, one of the solutions is to implement a Shutdown API, which is really simple. Is that the same principle? You inject the sidecar when you create a pod, your job is running, but just before ending your job, you call the Shutdown API that will tell Dapper Day to exit gracefully, and then Kubernetes will consider the job completed because those two processes will be completed with an exit code of 0. So now we're going to see if it's really works in 1.1. So I have a little demo prep here. 2 jobs. One job without calling the Shutdown API, which is like a job in the old Dapper, and one calling the API with the new API. So we have here a little wget, and one we try if it doesn't fail, but it's just for the demo. And I'm going to run those 2 jobs, and we will see 2 behavior. So the job are creating pod. Dapper day inject the sidecar, and when the job is ready and the sidecar is ready, your pod is ready. And after the little wait of 25 seconds, if I remember correctly, we'll have 2 different things somewhere near here. So you will have not ready in the 2 pod because Dapper day is currently shut down, but the first one will shut down with a completed state, and the other one will never shut down and will be not ready forever until Kubernetes will kill them with the timeout, etc. And I've put some useful link if you want. So this problem is a never-ending problem in Kubernetes. You have an issue in the Kubernetes on how to handle that, because it's a really long discussion and there are a lot of point of view. If you want to see how Istio is handling the same way as this Shutdown API, they're using the quit from the envoy sidecar. So at the end of the job, you're just calling the envoy API. Kuma has a different approach, which is to watch for pod without with sidecar alone and kill them, which is kind of interesting. And if you want the YAML using from the demo, and I hope to any question if you have.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hugo.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we already posted the link to the Dapper docs discussing how to go and use this new feature, and a little sneak peek into this one's marked as preview. There is some discussion in the Dapper repo right now about adding preview flags in the future, so keep an eye on that. We'll have more to share in the next couple of releases as well, and we'll continue that discussion on GitHub. I'll go ahead and now share my screen just for a second to intro our next presenter. Lynn, as part of the v1.1 release, created a local storage binding. So I'm going to kick it over to Lynn to do a quick demo for the new binding.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Everybody see my screen okay?
Yep, coming through for me.
Okay. So yeah, created a local storage binding. Notice that Dapper didn't have any way to address persist files, whatever, to local storage. This really came up in some extra work that we were doing around hybrid scenarios. And if you're running on premises, for example, and you may want to read and write files from the local file system. So let's kind of just get started here and look at what the component definition looks like. So pretty simple. There's not a lot to it as of yet. Again, contributions are always welcome. But really, the main thing is that the spec type is bindings local storage. And then really the only metadata from a spec perspective anyways, is the root path. And this is going to be where all of your files ultimately get stored if you upload them via the API. So let's fire up Dapper. Nothing special here, just running it on 3500. We should have seen that our components got loaded. Looks like it did. You can see it right here, my local storage. So with that, we are ready to rock and roll. So the first thing we're going to do is give you a demo of what it looks like just to ship some data up. I'm not going to specify a file name, anything like that. Notice the operation is create, the data is just some text. And ultimately, if you don't specify a file name, what you'll get back is a GUID file name here. Since I did specify my local storage to be this location, you can see that I do indeed have a file here. If we were to cat it, you can see that it's got the text hello world in it. Taking that a step further, we can go and we can specify some operational metadata in the request, basically specify the file name. I can also specify a path here. Realize this will all be anchored at whatever you specified in your component spec. You can't escape that. That's by design. So this is going to write basically that same information into a new folder. You can see there's a hello world text, cat that, same stuff. All right, so let's take it a little bit step further here. That's great for textual type stuff, but what if we want to upload some binaries? So in this downloads folder, I have a PowerPoint called dapper.pptx. If I instead, whoops, bad copy paste job here. Let me grab my command again. If instead, there we go. I first base 64 encode this PowerPoint and then upload it. Well, error parsing request. Look here. Body size exceeds the given size limit. So if you weren't aware in Dapper, by default, the HTTP request size is 4 meg. Now you can change that, but unfortunately, at least today, you cannot change that via the Dapper CLI. So I'm going to break out of here, and instead, I'm going to basically do the same thing. As you guys all know, the Dapper CLI just invokes Dapr behind the scenes. So I'm going to do the same thing, which does allow us to pass in this new argument, which is Dapper HTTP max request size. It's an integer in the form of megabytes. So I'm going to basically say that, hey, now, instead of the default 4 meg, our max size is going to be 100 meg. And if I run this request again, now all of a sudden, everything succeeds. If we have a look, we should have a directory here called blobs. You can see that there is a Dapper file PowerPoint here, just to prove to you that there's no magic and everything works. I should be able to actually kick that off, and it's there. Not only base 64. I basically convert it back to binary when we store it off. So we're good there. So a couple more examples. So that's just putting stuff, but at the same time, if we said now, hey, that hello world text file that we uploaded earlier, let's actually download it instead. You can see the operation changes to get. In the metadata, I'm still specifying the file name that I want, and I'm telling it to write it out to a file called hello world.txt. If I look here, I now have my hello world.txt, so that's great. I could do the same thing with the Dapper file, but more operations are supported here. Let's list all of the files that happen to be in my file store. This file name is a spot from root of where you want to list, and it will recursively list all the files. So I'm basically going to say, hey, list all the files that exist at my mount point. And you can see I get back a JSON array of files of the ones that we uploaded. This was the first one. This is our hello world text. And then there's the Dapper file. And then finally, just to round it all out, I can also do a delete. So if I want to delete the Dapper PowerPoint, let me clear this out. Same type thing, operations delete, specify the file name that I want to delete. It should be gone now. If we go look here, and indeed it is. Notice the blobs directory is still here. I can also delete that if I so choose, assuming that there aren't any files in it. Basically going to say, hey, delete this blobs directory. That should now be gone. If we have a look, indeed it is. And just to wrap up, to show you that we don't hopefully tear a bunch of stuff up, I'm going to try to delete the my files directory, which still has the hello world text in it. And you will get an error back basically saying, hey, this directory isn't empty, so you can't delete it. So that all being said, this works great locally. There's still some work that's going to need to be done to get this to work in Kubernetes. And that is basically right now, there isn't a way, at least not that I know of. If anyone from the maintainer team knows otherwise, let me know. There isn't a way. Basically, what ends up having to happen is the Dapper sidecar needs to be able to have a volume mount, because it's actually the sidecar that is writing these files. And there isn't a way today, whenever that sidecar is injected and the pod spec gets injected, the container spec gets injected, there's no way to basically specify the volume mount. You can specify the volume for the pod, but I need to still be able to specify the volume mount for the actual Dapper sidecar container. So that's something I've got on my to-do list unless somebody else gets to it first, but hopefully in version 1.2, that will be available, so that you'll be able to use this in all its glory inside of Kubernetes hosted environments as well. So that's it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lynn. We had one question in the chat on this. What happens if you try to list one directory above and try to escape from your root directory?
Yeah, so let's do that right quick. I'm glad you asked me. So let's clear this out so we all have a picture of what's going on. So if I understand correctly, you want to do something like this, right? Yep. So it won't allow you to escape. It'll still, no matter how many paths you try to go up, it's always still going to say, well, you can only see from a visibility perspective from your root path down. So regardless, you could make this, you could go on forever, right? And you're still going to get the files only anchored at the root.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, hopefully we'll help track down the openness question that you had there. But with that, I'm actually going to share my screen just one more time here, because it is time for the open discussion. So at this point, just raise your hand or drop a note in the chat if you want to just ask a question there. And we have a large number of maintainers and contributors here on the call. So we're happy to troubleshoot or answer any roadmap items or pretty much anything that's top of mind.
I think also if anybody did get to try out version 1.1 already and has some feedback, that's also great, or thoughts on some of the issues that Aaron mentioned or being considered for the future releases.
Yeah, definitely. One question from Charlie. How about doing a put on the two directories above file name? Same behavior of no escape from that?
Forgive the
yeah, so that's a good point. Let's give it a rip. So you want to basically try to create a file, and you want to try to create it up higher than let's go back to this hello world example here. And,
yes, forgive the live pen test.
You want to do something like this, right, Charlie?
I think I took over screen sharing, but
oh, sorry. Let me.
No worries.
Yep. Glad you said that. Let me reshare here. Everybody see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay, so yeah, so instead of writing to just my files, you want to try to escape and go up. Is that correct, Charlie?
Yep. Here we go.
All right, so there you go. It's still going to be rooted at my files hello world.txt. So
Awesome.
Yeah, can't get out of it. At least that's the idea anyways. Please try to break it, but yeah, that was a big security concern that I had, was like, oh gosh, this could be bad news. So did everything that all the research that I could to make sure that that you can't break out of it.
So
I
Lynn,
haven't done extensive testing with Symlinks, so that would be the only other thing, but it shouldn't break out of that either. So yeah, what's up, Mark?
Lynn, what was the reason why you created this component? What, did you have an interesting scenario that you used it in? Just
Yeah, so we were doing some, we've been doing so I'm on the Cloud Native Global Black Belt team. I know a couple of my other team members, I think, are on this call as well. We were putting together some proof of concepts and some demos around Azure Arc for Kubernetes to basically demonstrate some hybrid scenarios. We love Dapper, obviously, so we wanted to be able to Dapperize this quote unquote on-premises installation of Kubernetes. And we've got a kind of a sample project that we use, and in this project we were writing files to blob storage. Well, when you're on premises and you potentially are air gapped at times, there's no connectivity to the public cloud. And so we wanted to basically put together a component that would allow us to do something similar in the form of being able to write those files to the local a volume that's been mounted into that Kubernetes cluster. We saw that component didn't exist from a Dapper perspective, so just decided to write it and contribute back. So hopefully some other people will get some value out of it. Like I said, I think as soon as we get the changes in to allow those mounts to work inside of Kubernetes, it will immediately become much more valuable then. So.
good, thanks.
Sure.
Let me share my screen one more time. Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions, or if there's any open issues on GitHub that people would like to discuss, we can do that as well.
So I see Archer's on the call. I know that we're considering some improvements on the dashboard. I know if anybody on the call has been using the dashboard and has some thoughts, I think this would be a good time to maybe share some ideas or proposals to improve.
Yeah, for the Dapper dashboard.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. Personally, it'd be cool to see a component creation there as well. That was, I think I may have opened an issue for that, because I know I've used what's the one for Kubernetes, Octant or something like that. So I was looking into ways that we can add value, because I used Octant all the time for running Kubernetes clusters.
Yeah, there is an issue actually about Dapper in Octant as an add-on or extension. I don't know which term they use, but that is one thing, is that the Dapper dashboard is supposed to work beyond just Kubernetes, so it's standalone mode or any other feature runtime. So Octant, in my opinion, would be good for us to have a presence there, but it doesn't necessarily replace the dashboard. So that's where we like to get the community feedback about what we would like to see on the dashboard. For example, would you like to see a way for you to interact with the sidecar through the dashboard? Things like that. That I think the community feedback will help a lot to shape that. And last but not least, there's some aspects of the user experience that we can definitely change in the dashboard. So what expected behavior, for example, when you go to the logs page. The logs page has been recently redesigned. So let me see if we can open that up here really quick. Dashboard, Dapper. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me share my screen. Yeah, I can quickly show that. Give me a second.
Perfect.
Continue. Okay, so if you zoom in here, you can see this is the Kubernetes version. So for example, if you, one thing that we did was we redesigned the logs page in one of the past releases. So now it's like tailing the logs. is not, it doesn't do a full search. It's just tailing. And this has been running since last night. So you can pick which container you want to look the logs for. So that was a kind of a redesign because we were trying to do a search here. So it's very slow to load this page. So we simplified that. So feedback on this type of experience can definitely help. We don't have logs, for example, for standalone mode. That'll be interesting to implement. How can you stream the logs from the running process into the dashboard? I'm not even sure if it's possible, but that would be an interesting item to follow up with. So another thing we don't do. So here you can see all the components as well. So we also show the configurations, and we also show the status of each system component. Okay, so that's a high level of where the dashboard is now, and there's a lot more to be done here, and the community feedback would definitely help.
Awesome, thanks, Archer. Yeah, and feel free to post ideas in the chat as well. We're keeping an eye on that. I think we had one question from Ahmed. New Dapper here. What is the recommended way to test Dapper services? If one of the maintainers from one of the projects wanted to tackle that, or anyone else on the call.
So what's the way to test the Dapper? You're talking about unit test or integration test? So if I talk about unit test, the SDKs should allow you to mock the interaction with the Dapper sidecar. Okay, so that is one thing that SDK is now supposed to support that. So if you're using one of the Dapper SDKs and you cannot unit test, that is a bug in the SDK to be fixed. Okay, that has been improved now recently in the .NET SDK, for example, and we addressed that in the Java SDK too. Now, if you're doing integration testing, the way I would do it is I would do it with a real Dapper sidecar running along the app, and I would use the component configuration to swap out. For example, if I'm using Azure Cosmos DB in production, in my integration test, I'll probably swap it out with maybe Redis to run locally. So I don't have to incur a cloud setup. So you can make use of the component to swap things differently for your environments. Does that make sense? Okay.
Perfect. Let's see if there's any other, got that question. A little bit more discussion on the local storage binding, Octant. Yeah, if anyone has any other questions or discussion points, we can, I'll keep this open for just a couple more minutes, just in case there's any late joiners. On the flip side, any Dapper maintainers looking for any other feedback in addition to the Dapper dashboard for any input for anything right now?
I think it's like just like a general theme is like if you're looking to contributions into Dapper, if you want to do like a code contribution, the easiest way is to look at an existing issue that is tagged with good first issue. Okay, that's a good way to start. If you have a small improvement, you are definitely free to send a PR right away. If you're planning something, if you see something that is bigger, we highly recommend starting an issue to have the discussion first before you send a huge PR, and then have to review your proposal through a big PR after you put a lot of work on it. So keeping the discussions open for big things is better than sending a PR first. We've seen this happen a few times, but take a look at good first issues. And some of them are marked with like priority. which might give a sense of urgency. But those are things that you can get started right away and add value to something that we vetted that we need. There was a question about Thai.
Yeah, I think we have Ryan on the call if he.
Yeah, Ryan's the best person to answer this. Yeah.
Yo, I'm here. I'm ready for an incredibly detailed question about Thai. Where is the question?
The question is, have we thought about Dapper and Thai integration? And I will let you answer that.
I implemented Dapr and Thai integration like a year ago as part of Thai. So if you're not familiar and you don't know what Thai is a .NET focused microservices development, like local development tool. Basically spins up a bunch of microservices for you running on your computer, can do containerization for you, or can just run them as processes. And it's focused on .NET. It comes from the .NET team. I worked on it in a previous life. But anyway, we've added documentation to the .NET SDK section on Thai and sort of how to get started there. There are Dapper specific features as part of Thai. So if you scroll down for me, Aaron, there should be a Thai.yaml right there. And you basically, if you're using a bunch of Dapper microservices as part of Thai, turning on Dapper integration and having Dapper manage the lifecycle of the Dapper sidecars for you is as easy as what you're seeing here. So you say extensions name equals Dapper, and you give it a path to where your components are defined, and it will manage all the Dapper sidecars for you. So if you don't like having, like, say, Redis running in Docker all the time on your computer, or placement running in Docker all the time on your computer, Thai can manage all those things for you along with your app. So like, if you ran this file, you would get those 3 projects running, 3 Dapper sidecars for all of those, as well as Redis, as well as, you know, any other containers you wanted to run that you put here. So I've done some demos with Thai and Dapper on various .NET shows and things like that. Is there a more detailed question or something you're looking for?
No, I think that was addressed the question at hand. And then, yeah, I pasted the link to this documentation in the chat. And we're always adding additional integrations as well.
So Aaron, maybe now is a good opportunity to go over again some of the branching strategy of the docs. I think one of the things we saw kind of working towards the version 1.1 release is that there was some confusion about which branch to use if you want to make an addition to the docs, whether it's a typo or it's about a new feature coming into the next release. So maybe you can review that and show people where they can find that information.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the tip, Ori. Yeah, with the documentation, so up at the top here, you can see a list of all of our previous releases back before we even had a documentation site. So that'll take you back to like the GitHub docs, but it'll also take you back to like version 1.0. And the docs repo is a little bit different than the rest of the repos in that if you actually go to like the docs repo itself, you'll see that the primary branch is actually v1.0. We don't have a master or main branch. We version everything with the runtime. So for example, given that version 1.1 is our latest release, you'll see that that's our primary. That's what maps to docs.dapper.io. And this is where you do any sort of typo fix, clarification, and like any sort of documentation that you want to add to the current Dapper release. And we've made this the primary because we don't do like monthly or every couple like sprint releases and things like that. We're constantly updating our docs. So that way, if you fix a typo, you don't have to wait for the next release. It's fixed right away. So I would say 99% of the time when you're doing a docs PR, please do it to the current primary branch, which is currently v1.1. If you're writing new functionality, like a new component or like a new feature that will only be released at the next Dapper runtime release or the next Dapper SDK release, use in this case, the v1.2 branch. And we have a custom subdomain for that right now, v1-2.docs.dapper.io. which is a separate website, which that way you can get in your documentation for the feature that you're developing, and it won't impact the current, so people won't get confused that they're seeing documentation for features that haven't been released yet. Another thing that we've implemented is you'll see that, so in the Dapper documentation under developing applications and SDKs, you'll see that we're in the process of building out a lot of content for .NET and for PHP and for Python. We wanted that content to still live with the maintainers of the .NET SDK, just because like Ori and I, being docs maintainers, don't have super deep technical knowledge about the .NET and the PHP and Python SDKs. So what we've done is, so back here, if you open up SDK docs, you'll see that we're using a bunch of Git submodules. So if you click on this, it'll actually take you over into the .NET SDK, which is where the docs will live. And so this is where you'll find all of the markdown files for like the client server, all of that. And then anytime we build this doc site, we go ahead and clone and pull down all of the submodules and then build the Hugo site using Hugo mounts. So if you want to write new documentation for the Dapper.NET SDK, or we are very much looking for input on the Java SDK docs and the Go SDK and the C++, all of that, we're only just getting started, so contributions are very welcome here. That's kind of how that process is set up. And just like with the Dapper, we do have a list of issues that we are prioritizing and marking as maybe we're missing information or things are incorrect or there's typos and things like that. So we encourage you to take a look here. We're always welcoming contributions. We try to get to them as quickly as possible within a week. And is there anything I'm missing on this, Ori?
No, I think it's pretty good. Maybe two things I would like to add is one is as Aaron mentioned, if you have a typo or a link that's broken or clarification, you should go to the current release branch. But then usually the question comes, well, I wanted to also go to the next release, right? I wanted to leave and be carried forward. So just so you know, you're aware, the maintainers, Aaron and I, we do kind of like a weekly upmerge of these kind of PRs from the current release to the next one. So maybe you won't see it immediately in the preview branch, which is supposed to be, it's not supposed to be used for anything except for to see that you're changing things in preview. But once we do release the new release, those things will be available there. So we're trying to kind of have a good hygiene of upmerging things like this PR that Aaron is showing now. And we kind of go over, we try to do it pretty frequently every week. So it's not a big thing, and that we also just make sure to really upmerge the right things. There are, of course, changes that might only apply to version 1.1 that should not be carried forward. So we try to kind of distinguish and kind of go a little into those PRs. So that's in case you're wondering about that. Another thing to know is that part of the CI/CD process of the docs now includes, thanks to Charlie, by the way, who's on the call, includes external link validation. So inherently, of course, we're making sure that the docs website is built correctly. That's just part of Hugo trying to build the website. But we now also have a script that basically goes to everything that is a link that's outside the docs that Hugo does not check and makes sure that these things are alive. Now, the thing is that sometimes you will see a PR that you open that fails because something is broken. It might have nothing to do with something that you just changed. You might have changed one letter in a typo somewhere and suddenly you see a failure. That is sometimes because external things, you know, are out of our control, but we still have a dependency and we want to be able to see that. So don't be alarmed by that. Usually we can still like merge things even if there's like a failure. And also it helps us kind of find things. For example, like Aaron is showing, we just saw there was a new relic link that was causing failures. actually both Aaron and I, when we saw that thing, we opened issues on that, and I pinged Harry, who's a very responsive part of the community, and he actually just PR'd a fix for that. So those things should be passing now. But that's actually a good way for us to keep track of things that are failing outside. There were some like overall, like across the internet, a bunch of like issues last week, and that caused a bunch of failures that were just out of our control. There was also a Netlify issue a while ago. So some of the stuff is just like things that if we rerun the test, it's just gonna kind of resolve itself. But if you see failures in your PRs in the docs, just be aware of that as well.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Ori. We have one more question that was posted in the chat here a minute ago. On the same subject of testing, can it be an idea to have some mock or fake component like pub/sub with a Go channel or in-memory storage secret state, etc.?
So we actually do have, for dev purposes, a local secret store. We actually have two, one using, I think, environment variables, and the other one using a JSON file. I think that is pretty useful. But yeah, I think that might be a good idea for other building blocks as well. Obviously, these things are just for development purposes and should be, we have like a big note, I think, on that on the local, especially the secret stuff, which has to do with security. But I think those are great. If anybody wants to do those, pick those up as PR or contributions. I think that's a great idea.
Yep. On the subject of getting feedback from community members, we had I've been considering moving like the list of like supported secret stores and list of like supported pub/sub brokers out of operations components, pub/sub brokers, supported pub/sub, and just into reference, and just put the components in reference. Is that something that people would be interested in? Any reasons why that's not a good idea?
Yeah, I think Aaron, Aaron and I have been getting a lot of feedback about this, that this is a little confusing the way it's kind of structured right now. We're still working on it. But by the way, that's the cool thing about the docs website. You can, the search is actually pretty useful. But yeah, it should make more sense. I think the reference makes sense to me today after we talked about it.
Cool. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of positive feedback in the
cool.
chat about
we'll
that.
get on that then. Okay, that's a resounding yes. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that if there's no other questions, I think we'll wrap up this one. The recording will be available on YouTube along with all of our previous community calls. And we're always available on Discord. I'm trying to revamp my Discord notifications so I get notified a little sooner. I've been bad about that lately. So I'll be on there to answer questions about docs. And then I know the rest of the maintainers are super active in the runtime and the SDK channels as well. Anyone, any other maintainers have any closing thoughts or questions before we close out today's community call?
One I'd mention is that there's an interesting proposal that's been put forward that people might want to read, which I'll post in the chat window here for a configuration API building block. And people might want to read through that and see what they think of it and provide any feedback. It's an idea of providing configuration abstraction so that if you look at things inside Azure today, for example, it's a configuration service. If you look at Google, they have a configuration service. And so this is a proposal of how you can actually sort of have that as a general purpose configuration API that you can access through Dapper. So take a look at it.
Yeah, this one was very well written. So we definitely encourage you to check this out and provide your feedback. I saw a little bit of, yeah, very well documented. Lots of thumbs up on this and lots of discussion happening. So feel free to read through that. Cool, I think that's it. Unless there's any objections, we'll go ahead and close this out. But thank you so much, everyone, just in general, for your contributions to the Dapper project. We wouldn't be where we are right now without all of the amazing runtime, SDK, samples, quick starts, docs, all of the contributions from everyone. So we greatly appreciate it. And we'll be back in, I believe, 2 weeks for the mid-April community call. And I have some stuff that I'm working on that I'm excited to hopefully share pretty soon. So more to come soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.